As parents, we deeply care about the emotional and mental health of our children. Maybe you're even worried because you feel like you don't know how to teach your child to have mental strength. We often think that if we just protect them, maybe even protect them from things that have happened to us, then they will learn to be mentally strong. Oftentimes we think if we just provide, including providing kind of the positive reinforcement that we felt like we didn't have. Are you constantly pouring into your child and telling them how smart they are and how beautiful they are and all of the things that maybe you struggled with? And so you are trying to pour that out into them. But what if I told you we needed to shift the way that we do this? That we need to teach our children how to think, that we can actually teach mental strength. My name is Dr. B. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 25 years of clinical experience, but I've also raised 7 children, and maybe not like the best. If you talk to my children, they will tell you all of the mistakes that I have made. But I have learned so much about what you actually need to do to have mental strength. And that's part of my personal story also of I've lost 3 children and my husband, and I had to learn this mental strength. And as I look back at when I was raising my children, I'm looking back and going, gosh, if I would have just taught them how to think, how to regulate those emotions, they might have had less difficulties as they went into adulthood, right? So I'm able to teach you how to teach your children to be mentally strong. So learn from my mistakes, right? And learn from the things that I have done over the years. So what does that actually mean? What do we do to teach our kids to be mentally strong? I can tell you when I was raising my children, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books that would say, do this and your child will be like this, right? Some of them came from my church background with, it would say, if you teach your children these values, then they will make decisions and think in these values. But there wasn't this emotional thinking component. It was very behavioral. Everything that I read back then it was very behavioral, right? Like you punish and, things that you don't want, and you give positive reinforcement for things that you do want. And there is definitely some effectiveness in behavioral type teaching and counseling and how you interact with your children. And I do think that there should be reward and punishment. We should be showing them what real life is about. So you don't get a reward every time you do something good in real life. And you actually don't get punished every time you do something bad, right? But there are consequences to our decisions. There are positive rewards for the things that we do, right? So when we are thinking about behavioral component of raising children, think about how does this correlate to if you were an adult and you were trying to naturally reinforce positive behaviors. But that's not mental strength. Mental strength is not just doing the right thing, right? Mental strength, I have a very distinct definition of mental strength, and that is the ability to think through your problems and make decisions in line with what you want. Think about that for a moment. Are you able to think through your problems and make decisions in line with what you want? Often we call this discipline. We, call it willpower, but it's a little more complicated than that. So thinking, how do we teach our children to think? Now, in the mental health anti-stigma movement, right, we want children to be able to express their feelings. And so we began teaching about feelings like sadness and depression and anxiety, and even about mental health concerns. But we didn't actually teach them what to do with it. We just said, if you have this, it's a problem, tell somebody, which is true. We do need that. But now we have created a space, a container for these mental health concerns, and not a clear thing of what to do with it. So you say, well, yeah, but they teach coping skills. Yes, they do teach coping skills. And coping skills help with the emotion to decrease the intensity of the emotion, right? So let's say you're angry and you learn how to deep breathe, or you learn how to deflect that anger onto something else that's more appropriate. Coping skills are great. They decrease the intensity of the feeling, but it doesn't teach you how to think through that feeling, where that feeling came from, right? So I say this over and over again. In the Mentally Strong Method, I teach to think, organize, choose. Think, organize, choose. It's like this wheel that you have to do over and over and over again. And if you watch my content, you'll hear it over and over again. But if you're not doing it, if you're not thinking, organizing, and choosing throughout your life and that's what makes you stronger. We have this saying that says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That is not true if you have not learned how to think, right? How to organize it, how to make choices. And so it's this continual process. And mental strength is teachable and learnable, right? Like sometimes I think we're like, oh, you either have it or you don't, right? Somebody has a strong constitution, or they're just a strong person. And sometimes people in my generation will say, oh, this next generation, they don't have that innately in them. It can be taught, but you're like, well, nobody taught me. I just figured it out. Did you? You pushed through, you had grit, but could you teach someone else how you are mentally strong? Not that you are mentally strong, but how you did it, how you got there. And this is what our children are looking for. This is a generation that is not just going to push through because, right? They want to know why, they want to know how. And we need to take a step back in thinking that this is just an innate personality trait. This is what they need to be taught, mental strength. And we have to teach how to think, because when you just think about your problems or think about how you feel, there's actually a medical term for that. It's called rumination, and it is not good. The more you think about your problems, the more you think about how sad you are, the more sad you are going to be, right? So how do we teach them what to do with that? Okay, you feel sad. And this is where the Mentally Strong Method is different. And I teach the Mentally Strong Method, and it starts with you. You do, as the parent, want to learn the Mentally Strong Method so that you are teaching your child how to think, organize, and choose. So if you want to learn more about how to learn the Mentally Strong Method, what kind of things I teach in there, click in the link in the descriptions, and that will start some emails to you sharing this kind of information. How to teach this, we think, when these emotions come up, being able to identify them, and I think we've done a good job of that with our young children. But now we need to teach them how to organize it. Because what happens, I just told you, what happens when all you do is think about your problems, which for a young person, their problems are probably, I feel sad, I'm bored, I don't feel good about myself, I'm having these negative thoughts about myself. We teach them to organize them because you do something different with a lot of those different thoughts, right? So the depressed mood or anxious feelings are actually dealt with differently. Anxiety is a positive thing. We can learn to make anxiety a strength. Depression's coming from somewhere, and it may just be how you're talking to yourself, but it may be, some grief or some things that you're struggling with. And this can be as young as 5 years old to when it becomes really obvious with your teenager, right? So if we can teach them to organize this so that they can make a choice about it, right? And then repeat that cycle. Oftentimes when we're talking to young people, we're trying to get them to think too big. Let's say I'm working with a teenager and the parent is like, I just, don't they want to go to college and have a good career? Well, today they actually want to find something that makes them happy, right? And so bringing it down to a choice for today helps in this, we call it a flywheel. And if you don't know what a flywheel is, it's like this circular thing that goes over and over again. If you just repeat this, but when we try to instill these long-term values and goals for our children, they're like, I don't really care. Today I don't feel well. Today I want this. And then, so maybe you're like, well, that's immediate gratification. We can't give our children everything that they want. True. But we can use what they want now to motivate them in this cycle of think, organize, choose, right? Because that is our job as a parent, not to protect them from everything, but to teach them how to be mentally strong into their adulthood. So we have to organize those thoughts and not letting any of us, ourselves, our children, stay in the thinking. You think, then you organize, then you make a choice. And choices, it's definitely depending on the child. Choices need to be age appropriate and long-term gratification appropriate, right? The younger the child, the more immediate gratification that they need. Some, children around age 10 or 12, you can start increasing that gratification to, days, weeks, and just thinking about it like a muscle. This think, organize, choose is like going to the gym 3 times a week. You are creating that muscle memory of how to actually be mentally strong in everything, in the positive things that you want, the goals, but then also when things are hard, when you're not happy, knowing how to organize that so that you can make a choice. And sometimes even for myself, I need to make a choice today to do something to make me happy because the long-term thing that I'm working for is long-term, right? But if we can learn to do that, so remember, it's think, organize, and choose. Choices are in 3 buckets. They are in the immediate bucket, right? Like, what are you choosing today? So today, I chose to work on a certain project, get this video done. That is my now. It is towards a long-term vision, right? But that is my now. This is what I need to do today. And then you have your, what I call short-term goals. Your short-term goals should not be more than 90 days. We cannot, as humans, we cannot focus for more than 90 days. And I'm talking to us adults. So imagine for children, depending on the age, I wouldn't start with 90-day goals till someone is a teenager, right? They should be 1 week, 30-day goals and having some reinforcement in that process. But make sure it's going towards the big goal, right? We have to teach the children why we're making these choices today and really get them involved in that long-term goal. You have a long-term goal for your child to be quote unquote successful, right? And that means in a career sense, in a human sense. But what does that mean to them? Sit down and talk about that as your, long-term vision. Like, what does adulthood look like to you? And just let them kind of talk that through. And that is the big vision, right? But then we have to help break it down to what does that mean today? What does that mean in 30, 60, 90 days at the most with children, right? Keeping the choices in front of them, keeping this flywheel part of the conversation, think, organize, choose. Come learn the Mentally Strong Method. I host a class every week, every other week. It's live. I really go deep into this think, organize, choose. We have programs that you can get involved in. Click the link below. I'd love to see you there.